So, welcome back to the Prescription of Travel MD podcast. So, we've got a really great show in store for you today. My next guest is a kindred spirit of mine. She is also an emergency medicine doc, and she shares my love and enthusiasm for travel hacks and tips and tricks and using points for travel and Disney and just all the things. And she's going to give you the scoop on even more ways that you can save if you're military that you maybe didn't know about. And so we actually got a chance to meet at a points conference that we had recently in Chicago. And so it was cool to see her in real life after, following her on Instagram for so long. So I'm really glad that she can be here to talk with us today about all these things. So welcome to the show, Michelle.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So I always like to start by finding out a little bit more about the background of our guests. So tell us a little bit more about how you got started into emergency medicine and travel and all the things.
When I was pretty young, I decided I wanted to be a doctor, maybe 8th grade. And I thought I always wanted to be a pediatrician. I really love kids. I love babies. But going through medical school, I sort of loved everything. I realized I liked adults and I didn't love pediatrics as much as I thought I would, but loving everything and then doing my emergency medicine rotation, I was like, oh, this kind of is everything. So with emergency medicine, you get to know a little bit about a lot of things. That's how I found emergency medicine. I've been practicing out of residency now for 12 or 13 years, I think.
Very cool. I wanted to be a pediatrician too, so that's funny that you say that. And then I got in, I was like, yeah, emergency medicine. I was going to do a peds EM fellowship and was like, oh yeah, this is what I'm going to.
Yep, I went down that exact same route. I was like, oh, peds EM, never mind.
And then you still get to see peds, and I see kids all the time now. So yeah, so very cool.
Yep, I still see a good fair share of my pediatrics in the emergency department I work in.
Awesome. Where do you live now?
I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and I work outside of Nashville in Sumner County, which is, one of our surrounding counties. It has a bit more of a rural and suburban population. It was more rural when I started 12 years ago, and now it's, a mix of rural and suburban.
And so you live in Tennessee, so is it easy to get in and out of Tennessee to travel to different places or?
Yes and no. It's very easy to travel in the United States. Southwest has a hub here in Nashville, so I can go pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Some of the further west places like, Montana, like big land, smaller population places are a little harder to get to for us without a connection. But otherwise, we can get anywhere in the U.S. Leaving the U.S. is a little bit harder. We do have a British Airways flight to London, and we're getting a Iceland Air flight to Reykjavik, and we're getting a Aer Lingus flight to Dublin. So super excited about those recent announcements. Those were announced in the last couple months and have not started yet. We'll start in 2025. So I'm excited about those.
And so you travel a lot with yourself and your family. Is that right?
Yeah. So growing up, we went on road trips a lot. We didn't travel a ton by plane, but I've always had a love of travel. And, emergency medicine, one of the things that drew me to emergency medicine was that when you're off, you're totally off. You're not carrying a pager. You're not worried about what's in your inbox or answering questions from people. So I really love to take advantage of my time off. My husband's retired military, which maybe we'll get into a little more. But when we got married, he was active duty, and he was extremely active duty. He was, deployed probably 6 months a year for the first 5 or 6 years of our marriage. And then when he was home, he was in the U.S., but not necessarily at home. So I decided that even before I had my daughter and then after I had my first daughter, I was like, well, we can stay home and be bored, or we can go visit friends. And, with all of our steps of education, we make close friends and people move throughout the country. So I have great friends all over the country and using that time to visit them. And they had similar age children. So that was kind of my first step into really enjoying the travel. And it has only grown from there.
And did you find that you were traveling more domestically versus internationally with small kids?
I started with almost all domestic short travel, New York, Orlando, going to see my parents in Louisiana. I have family in California, so we went out there a couple times. I didn't do anything international with kids until my daughter was in kindergarten and she's in 3rd grade now. So it was shortly after COVID. There were still restrictions, but my brother was stationed in Italy. He's also in the military. And so we went to go visit him. So that was our first big international trip. And that we paid cash with, and I have since seen the light. And our next trip to visit him was on points in business class.
So when you started traveling with the military, Did you find that there were other options available to you because you were military that made it easier to travel or less expensive?
Yeah, there's a lot of great military perks. And, people in the military work hard and risk their life. And people that are the spouse of military also work really hard. And while I'm not on the front lines of the war risking my life, my husband's gone 6 months a year. No, he's not anymore. He's retired. But so the perks that are available to the military are great and vast. Some of my favorite perks are when you're active duty and for your spouse, Amex and Chase don't charge you any annual fees. Like Amex Platinum, no fee. Chase Sapphire Reserve, no fee. So that's a huge savings. Unfortunately, I wasn't super into, points and miles travel while my husband was active duty. So we had a free Amex Platinum because I knew it was free, but I didn't really, jump fully down that rabbit hole. Well, I could have taken full advantage of those no fees.
And that's huge.
Yeah, it's huge. There's other perks like free checked bags, I think on American for military. There's just a lot of, discounts for military at various places that you travel. My husband, all the military bases have hotels on them, and those hotels are part of the IHG program. So he racked up a ton of IHG points when he would, travel to different military schools around the country and have to stay in the hotel on base. So he has, several 100,000 IHG points from just his travels and was Spire Elite or whatever when he was most active. He's not that anymore. One of my other favorite military perks is that the military has hotels around the world that are just for military. They have one in Hawaii on Waikiki Beach called the Halikoa. And I haven't stayed there, but I have used their beach umbrellas and chairs for $10 for a full day, which is amazing. They have Shades of Green, which is in Orlando, which is, if you're familiar with Disney, it's right across the street from the Polynesian. They used to have a walking path where you could just walk to the Polynesian and get on the monorail from there, but they have demolished that path and will not be rebuilding it because of construction and expansions. So that's a bummer. You have to take the bus. But all of the hotels charge by your rank. So for, depending on your rank, around $200 a night with no taxes, you can stay at these resorts in amazing places for places that you might not be able to afford otherwise. There's also a location in Garmisch-Partenkirchen in Germany, which I visited this summer. We didn't stay there. We stayed in an Airbnb because I was with my brother and his wife and baby. But we did go to the resort and got some tickets through them because they all have ticket offices that get you discount tickets, which is a great benefit of Shades of Green. Even if you're not going to stay there, you can get military discount tickets for Disney. And then they have another location in South Korea, which I have not been to, but certainly it's on my list.
Lots of perks there. And I know that you get access to all the Disney parks as well. Is that right?
There's different military perks for Disney. The biggest perk is that you can get the Military Freedom Pass, I believe is what it's called for Disney. And it's, $50 to $100 cheaper than what any other 4-day or 5-day park hopper pass would be. Universal is where there's the biggest perk. Now, there's no hotel to stay at that's military at Universal, but they do have great military discounts. We were able to buy Universal park hopper 1-year pass for about $200 a person, which is the cost of going to Universal for one day for one person. It's amazing. So we went in February and we went again in October. I was like, we have to get our money's worth, but really going one day, we got our money's worth. And then if you stay at the Universal hotels, you get, the fast passes, and they have military discounts at those hotels. So you can't really points travel the Universal hotels, but it's worth it to me to pay for 1 or 2 nights and get the super expensive fast pass. That's not what Universal calls it, but I don't remember what express pass, I think. But the unlimited express passes come with the fancier hotels, and they have the military discount, which is nice.
Do they give you any discounts on Disney cruises?
I have heard that there's a 50% discount on Disney cruises, and I would love to take one, but I have not. That's all I know. But I have heard there's great discounts. I just have not personally taken one.
And then if you're retired military, do they still allow you to take advantage of some of those perks, or do you have to be active duty?
If you are retired, which usually means you've served 20 years, there's other ways to become retired, but we don't need to go into those. Then you get pretty much all the perks of being active duty, except you have to pay your credit card fees. They don't forgive those anymore once you're out of the military. But we still get all the Disney benefits. We get all of the hotels around the world through the military. Now, if you're a veteran and you're not retired, you didn't do those full 20 years to get your full retirement, then you don't get those benefits typically as much. I know Shades of Green will do like a week in September or something, or a week in February, where you can just use veteran benefits to stay there. You don't have to be active duty or retired.
And so what advice would you give to like military families who are looking to maximize their travel opportunities?
You can Google anything you want to do. Like anything you want to do, there's probably a military discount for it. You want to go shop at Home Depot and Lowe's, there's a military discount. You know, you want to go travel somewhere, there's probably a place that gives you a military discount. When you book a hotel, there's almost always a place where you can click military discount. And I can count like out of 50 to 75 nights in a hotel that I've clicked on the military discount, I've maybe been asked for my military ID once. I'm not suggesting that you try and take advantage of that, but it's interesting that you get the military discount and they're not usually verifying it.
I know you mentioned that your husband racked up a bunch of IHG points. Do you have an IHG card?
He has an IHG card. I do not. Unfortunately, since he's gotten out of the military, he is not in his travel era as I am. He prefers to stay home. So he does still have a bunch of IHG points. We will put them to use at some point. But right now he's enjoying his home time and not gallivanting all over the world. Thankfully, he doesn't mind when I leave and go gallivant all over the world with or without our children.
Yeah, and my husband's not military, but he prefers to stay at home most of the time when I'm out. He's like, I think he can only do so much. And then there's like certain places that he wants to go. And then the rest of the time he's just like, okay, well, I don't really have any interest in going to that place, but you go right ahead, So
it's nice to have a husband that supports my travels. I would love for him to travel with me, and we will hopefully do that again at some point. But right now he says, you go have fun.
You go have fun, yeah. And I see you all the time traveling with your kids. And so what's been your most memorable trip thus far?
Probably our 2 trips to Italy have been the most memorable. One of them, like I said, was on cash. And the second one, my husband stayed home. I took my mom and my 2 girls business class to Italy on Air France from Newark. And we stayed in Milan. We went to Venice, Sicily, Turin, and then home again from Milan. And that was amazing. Our first trip to Italy was also amazing. We did Rome on that trip. And my daughter just finished a big unit on ancient Rome at school. So it was cool to be like, you've actually been to the Colosseum, right? And she's like, oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
It's so cool. And it's nice to be able to put all the things that they're learning in school and around them into like practice. And, this is like real life, And I love that points make it so much easier to do those things and to do them comfortably.
In emergency medicine, we see the worst day of most people's lives, or a lot of people that come to see us, it's the worst day of their lives. And so we are constantly reminded that life is short. Enjoy your health, take advantage of what you can. And Points and Miles just makes it so much more achievable to travel the world and see places and explore and take advantage of our time off.
I know I have racked up a bunch of credit cards over the past just year alone, and I probably have my own favorites, but what's in your wallet? What are your favorite cards?
Right now, my most favorite card is my Chase Freedom Unlimited, because I got the double points or double cashback offer that I have converted into points. So I get 3x on everything, 6x on restaurants. It was an amazing offer. I have, I think, until January 3rd. So I'm just trying to rack up those points. I'm not working on any subs right now, so everything is going on that. I also love my Amex Gold for 4x at restaurants. And then when I'm traveling, I'm always taking my Chase Sapphire Reserve for the no foreign transaction fees and 3x on travel. One other military perk that I didn't mention is that some cards have international fees, some don't. The Chase Freedom Unlimited has international fees, but if you're active duty, Chase will actually waive all of the international transaction fees. So if you were, using your Chase Freedom Unlimited abroad, they waive those fees, which is a great perk.
Yeah, especially if you had the opportunity to snag that Chase Freedom Unlimited card when they had the promo that's going on. Every time these promos come up, And then you look back and you're like, man, I wish I'd signed up for that card. And you just realize that they're never bringing that back.
I've seen people have posted that they've just gotten their bonus and they've gotten like 500,000 points as their bonus. I'm not going to be having that many points because I have gotten several subs in the past year as well. And I don't run a business off of my Chase Freedom Unlimited, but it will be in the 6-figure number for sure.
Right, which is pretty cool, especially if you still were able to get other subs in that process, I'm a big fan of Chase points, and I use a lot of my Chase points mostly for my hotel stays. And we just went to Costa Rica, so I've used up a lot of my Chase points. And so now I'm trying to figure out a way to stockpile some more. And then they have the Southwest card that's coming out, or at least the next round of getting companion passes will be, starting in January. Do you have the companion pass or Southwest card?
I do. The companion pass was really my gateway drug into points and miles. I've had it for several years now. Unfortunately, my Southwest card is my oldest credit card. I had an older one in college and I didn't know better and I canceled it when I got the Amex Platinum. So I have to get creative about earning my companion pass. This year I managed to get enough referrals and plus I was buying some tickets in cash to try and get status, which I am not going to ultimately achieve, and I'll have to not be on A-list this coming year. But yes, companion pass is fantastic. I mean, it's buy one, get one free for up to 2 years of flights on Southwest, which for us, we can go pretty much anywhere in the U.S. with that. I love Southwest. They're certainly my favorite domestic airline. And maybe that's because I'm limited in my options here in Nashville, but
no, even from Las Vegas, we use Southwest a lot. And so we have family in Texas. And my parents are also from Louisiana. So we fly to Louisiana and, going to Orlando to get to Florida, all those things are like Southwest. And so we have a cruise that's coming up. We're going on a Disney cruise actually in March for spring break. And so working on getting a companion pass so that way we can get ourselves to Orlando. Tickets to Orlando from Las Vegas are expensive.
They are, especially for spring break.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, we went in October, so I always talk about time that I used all my American airline points to get to Orlando. Before I knew any better, I was like, oh, I've got all these points, let me use them. And so, it saved us like almost $3,000 on flights to Orlando for 4 people. And it was October. It wasn't even spring break. So tickets there are just always expensive. So
they're super expensive.
I'm counting on being able to get my Southwest companion pass, but I'm running into some velocity issues with Chase.
Yeah. I mean, if I had to qualify, I would have to do the 2 business cards. And I also would probably run into velocity issues. So hopefully you can cancel some cards or lower some credit limits and get approved.
Yeah, fingers crossed, right?
You have time. You have until March.
I do. Yeah, pretty much.
I guess February. You got to qualify by February and have the statement close.
Qualify, and then I figure I could get some points and actually be able to use the points to book the, flights to get there. And so we'll see. If not, there are other ways, and so we'll figure it out. But I was a little excited about that one.
I have recently discovered Alaska miles. I took advantage of a Built Rent Day promo to transfer my Built points. And then I took advantage of the Amex to Hawaiian to Alaska pathway to transfer. And I have found some amazing deals on Alaska flying on American. I got a ticket for our au pair to join us in Costa Rica for 7,500 points each way from Nashville to Costa Rica. But there's a layover no matter how we get there. And then I got tickets for us to go to the Bahamas and 7,500 points each way. And looking at Southwest, they were ridiculous numbers of points or cash. It was like $400 per person each way. And even with the companion pass, that amount just doesn't make sense. It's not a far distance.
We used Alaska points to get back from Costa Rica and flying back through LA, but even then it wasn't as great of a redemption as that. So yeah, and I love that they have the loophole now where you can transfer your Amex points to Hawaiian and then from Hawaiian to Alaska, so that way you can book these incredible flights that were once only available if you had Alaskan miles or an Alaskan card, which was not very many of us, I imagine.
Yeah, I feel like that pathway is going to go away at some point. I don't want it to, but I'm enjoying it while it lasts.
Have you transferred a bunch of points over?
I transferred 100,000 Amex points like the day or the day after it became available to transfer to Hawaiian and then Alaska.
Devin from Appoint Me to First Class just did an episode on it, and I was thinking, I'm like, man, maybe I should transfer some points over, like flying to Tahiti or, Fiji or one of these places. Like, sounds like it might be a little more attainable with points using that pathway. So it's definitely on my radar for the year, and I feel like I need to do it now, or I'm going to be sitting in the same position as I was with the, the Freedom card, going, man, why didn't I do it then?
Hindsight is 2020, right?
It is. So when I get off this call, I'll go transfer my points. You post a lot about these things on your social media. So I know, like, whenever things pop up, I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. Maybe I should do that. And so you're under the handle Dr. Points and Passports.
Yep, that's me, Dr. Points and Passports.
And we can find you there. And then you have a blog too. Is that right?
I do have a blog, drpointsandpassports.com. It's not huge right now. I'm working on more posts.
But it will be.
It will be. I have a full-time job and 2 kids, but I do love posting on the blog and summarizing my trips and itineraries and things that we've done on our trips. I just added a post on my trip to Munich this summer, and I'm working on my Salzburg post, which was a day trip during my Germany trip this summer.
And you have a few trips that are coming up.
I actually am in a little bit of a lull for a few months, which is kind of fine. It's good to be home for a little while. But in March, we're going to Costa Rica, and we'll stay in La Fortuna area for a few nights on a boutique hotel because there's not really points options there. And then we'll stay at the Andaz Papagayo for 5 nights. It was funny. I actually booked it last year right before they announced that the category was going up. And it was like one day before, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I booked this now rather than like the next day when everybody else was like, oh, I have to book this right now. So I'm super excited for that. I've never been to Costa Rica. And then in about a year, I'm taking my daughter to Paris. That was her 10th birthday trip. So she'll turn 10 over the summer, but I don't want to go to Paris in the hot summer. So we're going to go for her fall break. One of the things that I enjoy is traveling with my kids one-on-one. It's just great bonding time for us. They're not, fighting with their sibling about attention or, who got the purple crayon. We just get to enjoy time with each other. And with my husband willing to stay home, that works out nicely. So it'll just be her and me, and I've created a little travel monster, and she's like, can we fly business class? So we're flying business class there and back.
I love it. But then you don't feel guilty about it because you can do it with points, So it's not like you just spent $4,000 on a business class seat for a 10-year-old.
I am cheap at heart. I like nice things, but I don't like spending a ton of money. So the fact that I can do it with points and miles makes it attainable at all, because it just wouldn't happen. I mean, it would happen in economy and we would survive. But once business class and lie flat seats, it's really hard to go back to those long haul flights not in business class.
That's what everyone keeps telling me. So I'm like, we haven't flown business class yet. We tried to book our premium economy flights this summer, and then our bookings got downgraded because the plane didn't actually have a premium economy. So it was like, oh, this was a step up for us, And it was kind of last minute. Everyone was saying, if you're going to go to Europe over this summer, it's not going to happen, because it was the Olympics and, in December, there were flights that popped up that were nonstop from here to Amsterdam. And I was like, we're going. So booked the tickets, and then we got downgraded. But it was still an amazing trip. And they gave us 75% of our points back. So, I spent $380 and 44,000 points to get 6 of us from Las Vegas to Amsterdam. So
that's amazing.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, well, not too bad.
There is some light at the end of the tunnel there, but you will do it.
Especially when you don't know.
You didn't know you were going to get points back?
Well, I knew they were giving us points back, but I didn't know how many. But also, we haven't known the comforts of business class and lie flat seats.
It is much better to not know, especially in that situation. We flew KLM home from our trip to Italy in premium economy, and it was great. The flight attendants on KLM are so nice. And premium economy was great. The food was good. It was comfortable. It was a daytime flight. It was totally fine.
And that's how we felt when we were coming back too. So we flew back on Virgin, and we had premium economy on Virgin. So that, was like, oh, this is we're ritzy for us. We were thinking about going to Paris this summer, and I've been looking for flights, but I know it's hard because you're supposed to, start looking a year in advance. And I have a hard time planning my life a year in advance. And so flights are not booked, and we'll see what happens.
Our trip to Paris next October, I just totally gambled in assuming that my daughter's fall break is going to be the same as it was last year. So fingers crossed that I'm not going to have to totally cancel this all and rebook it. But if I do, it's minimal change in cancellation fees. So we'll find something. I feel like if you subscribe to, some of the alert services like the Points Analyst or Thrifty Traveler, as long as you're not looking for, 6 business class flights on one specific day, then I think you can find something, especially to somewhere like Paris, that there's so many flight options.
Right. Yeah. So I'm not too worried about it. I'm like, we'll go somewhere. And I'm also that person who's like, hey, there's a flight that popped up. Let's go here. I was looking for a trip to go to before we booked Costa Rica. And there was a flight to Ireland. And my sister's like, you want to go to Ireland in November and it's cold? And like, I was like, yeah, well, there's flights available. So let's go.
I totally subscribe to the follow the deal methodology.
So we'll see where we end up.
I'll follow along on your Instagram too.
So if people want to reach out to you and learn more about you, where can they reach you at?
Probably the best place to find me is on Instagrams, and feel free to DM me. I'm quite active on there and happy to reply. So at Dr. Points and Passports, that's with the doctor written out, everything spelled out fully there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I think you've shared so many gems for people who maybe didn't know about some of the perks of being in the military. Like you said, when you started out, you weren't aware of like having the fees waived for your credit cards. That's huge for people who are really interested in opening cards and earning the subs and getting points to be able to travel. So I think a lot of people are going to benefit from just hearing your take on all of these things. And I think points allow people to be able to travel more, but also to be able to travel better, right? So like we mentioned, there's no way we would be paying for these business class seats. If we had to pay cash, we'd be right there in economy. But the power of points,
Totally revolutionary. I highly recommend it for everyone that can.
Yep. And so if you're following Michelle, like she posts all like the points deals all the time, and she posts about like the places that she's traveling to. And so you can maybe get some ideas for your own trip and see that, it's doable. And if you have kids or if you have a spouse who doesn't prefer to travel long distances, then you may get some ideas and realize that this is possible for you too. It's not just something that's for the rich, and it's not something that's just for people who have no kids and people who maybe don't have that type of support. So, follow along on Prescription to Travel MD as well. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel that we've just started, and we love to hear from you. We'd love to help you along in your own travels to help get you to your next destination. So thank you again for listening, and we'll see you again soon.